serving District 6, Earl Poleski. Hi, Earl.
Good to see you, Bart.
Good to see you. Happy holidays.
Happy holidays to you.
So you have southwestern Jackson County.
Yeah, 4 townships: Concord, Poleski, Hanover, and Spring Arbor. So the southwest part of the county.
And the commission has a new member after November's election.
We will have a new member. Yeah, John Willis was elected in the city. He'll take the place of Jeremy Alexander. Recall Jeremy was appointed to fill the empty spot when Daniel Mahoney was elected mayor of the city of Jackson. But he didn't win his re-election. John Willis won. And so we'll have a new member. But John, I think, is well familiar to many folks in Jackson.
Well, I know he's very familiar to every member of the county commission, so I'm sure it's a great start as everyone already knows each other.
Mm-hmm. But one new member out of 9. There are 9 county commissioners.
Yeah. And the commission's going to have to take a look at going back to the voters or Plan B after a couple of defeats. The county had asked for voters to approve a jail millage and also the 911 surcharge, both defeated.
Yeah, they were pretty thoroughly thumped in almost every precinct of the county. So yeah, we're going to have to think about what our communication is going to be. I think the sheriff and his folks did a lot of hard work trying to let folks know the status of the jail. Clearly, though, the voters were not ready to pass that. We'll have to think about that again. I think the idea or the concept is to maybe approach the voters again in a couple of years during the general election. We will have to limp along until then with our existing jail and millage.
People, I think school districts, there's a strategy, you'd want to ask voters at a certain time of year when maybe the voters aren't going back in as big number as a general election, the primary or a special election. Any thought to maybe looking at a request at a time other than the general election?
Well, cynically, that's what a lot of folks would think. Let's ask when not as many folks are going to vote and when maybe those who would support something would tend to turn out. I think, though, that the view, at least here in Jackson, is let's make sure that if we're going to have a tax, that as many people as possible have a chance to weigh in on it. That's why we did it during this congressional election year, and why I think it won't go. It's my impression is it will probably not come back up again until the presidential election in 2 years.
Well, it gives the county and the sheriff even more time to, I guess, demonstrate the need. You and I have both seen the place, and it's clearly not sufficient for the population or the people that work there.
Right. It's a 70-year-old building, and I think what that tells you is, number one, it's 70 years old. Of course, it's used 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year, by people who don't want to be there. Okay, by the inmates they don't want to be there, and so they're not very caring about the building. And I think in 70 years, the design of jails has changed. Now we're very much concerned with protecting inmates from each other, protecting our correction officers from the inmates, making sure everybody's safe.
Yeah, and protecting inmates from themselves.
That from themselves, that's true. And I don't know that everybody in Jackson County knows, but we have 2 jail facilities that are run by the county. One is Chanter Road, okay, and that's the newer one. Was built about 20 years ago with the millage that just expired. But that's for folks who have been, that's for misdemeanor folks who are just serving their short term, okay? The downtown jail, Wesley Street, is where we typically hold accused felons. In other words, these are folks who have been accused of some pretty bad crimes and who are not bonding out, so they're in our jail. We're responsible for them. And we have to protect them from each other, okay? We have to protect our corrections officers from them as well. And it's important for us to do that. Now, the concept was to build a new higher security facility at Chanter Road for these types of folks, and then tear down the old jail, because the old jail is pretty awful. Clearly, we're going to have to think about what we want what can we afford? What will the taxpayers accept? And then present some plan in a couple of years.
Well, just thinking out loud, you know, we've got big corrections complex. Is there? I think there's parts of it that are. Well, I know there's parts of it that aren't used, but it's because they're so old. So I don't know if that's ever been a consideration.
That's a question that was asked as part of this analysis, and the answer is if it's state-owned, that's theirs. It's not the county. The county jail is the purview of the county and of the sheriff, and we have to take care of our own facility and provide our own facility.
Got it. Well, I think most of our viewers know that Earl Poleski is a former state representative, and in this last election, I think everybody on both sides, Democrats and Republicans, were surprised at the House and Senate flipping.
They did. The Democrats pretty much ran the table here in the state. They have taken control of the House by a 56-54 majority, I think, and the Senate is going to be 2018. And of course, they already had the governorship and the Attorney General and the Secretary of State. In addition, even the Supreme Court justices that were nominated by Democrats were also elected. So it's going to be different for the Democrats. They have been kind of the loyal opposition for a while the Republicans have been in charge in the legislature. Now they have to govern completely, and that's a different kettle of fish.
But you had that experience with Republican-controlled House and Senate and the governor's office.
And I can tell you that even when you're in charge, not all the folks in your party agree with what should be done. And when you've got a thin majority, you can't have one or two members decide they don't like something, because that will keep you from having a majority vote. So it's not easy to govern. But the Democrats are going to have to do that, and I think that's a function of redistricting to some extent. I mean, I lost a couple of bets with my friends. I didn't think the districts were going to change as much as they did, and it cost me a couple of rounds of drinks. But they did change, and that has resulted in the change in the legislature.
Well, I look at it as Jackson County, you know, being represented now by 4 state representatives, but you know, their power or their influence or it's diluted really when you have the county split up like that.
Well, each of them, I don't think there's any one rep that is solely within Jackson County. So their attentions will be divided between Jackson County and the other counties that they represented, in Washington or Ingham or Calhoun or Lenawee, Hillsdale.
Yeah, only 2 of them live in Jackson County.
Well, that's the function of redistricting. That's what happens. We'll even have 2 different state senators, neither of whom will have Jackson County as their sole district.
Or their home.
Or their home. That's right. That's right. So it's going to be different. It's going to be different, but elections have consequences, and you move on. And fortunately, here we are in the United States, the most wonderful country on earth. And fortunately, when you have a change in government, it can change kind of the general direction, but our country is a wonderful thing, and it keeps functioning every day. And we should thank God for that. It's a wonderful thing that we have.
Earl is, of course, a CPA by profession, and it's the end of the year. And are there any things that our viewers should be mindful of as the year comes to a close?
Tax-wise, well, of course, this year we did not have advance payments of child tax credits, for example. We did not have stimulus payments that came out. So this year, tax-wise, is really not too much different than it's been. Tax rates haven't changed appreciably. I think at this late moment of the year, people should be just thinking about whether they've had enough tax withheld from their pay, or have they paid in an appropriate amount of tax. What I've seen with some clients, and in fact in my own situation, is that sometimes the withholding isn't quite as much as it should be. The withholding tables have been adjusted so that you might find yourself a little short, or your refund being less than it has been in past years. So it's a good time to kind of think about where do I stand tax-wise, so you don't have a surprise when this year's tax return is done.
How often do you recommend someone review their W-4?
Well, at least annually. They should think about how much tax they're having withheld. And it's not only your wages, but it's other types of income you might have. They might have Social Security income or IRA distributions or a business or other sorts of income, investment income. And some of that doesn't have withholding. And here we are in December. Many mutual funds make their distributions in December, and oh my goodness, they make a big distribution, a surprisingly large one, for example, and folks haven't had tax withheld from it. So it's a good time. This December is a month to think about, where am I tax-wise, and do I have enough tax paid in to make sure you don't get a surprise when this year's tax return is done.
Yeah, don't spend it all on Christmas.
Oh my. Well, have a good time for Christmas, okay? But just know where you stand. It's important for folks to kind of just plan ahead a little bit and have a knowledge of where they are. And this is the time of year when we kind of visit with clients and say, you know, where do you stand, and what do you think next year is going to look like? What should we be thinking about as we think about going off into the future? Now, my view is probably with divided government in Washington, we're not going to see many changes in tax law. Okay, the House of Representatives did get taken over by the Republicans, so you probably won't have much in the way of really controversial tax legislation going through next year. Now, Michigan may make some changes. Who knows? The Democrats have made some noise about undoing the retirement tax. But just keep your eyes and ears open as always.
All right. Appreciate you coming in. Thanks for all the info.
It's always good to be here. Appreciate the chance to talk.
Jackson County Commissioner and CPA, Earl Poleski. More